A tear rolled down my face. I wanted to tell you more than anything, but some confessions can only be read, they can never be spoken. She held both letters against her heart, as if she was afraid someone might take them away. She looked into my eyes. What truth could be so painful that you chose paper instead of your own voice? I looked away because some truths become easier to write than to speak. She slowly opened the drawer. Inside were dozens of sealed envelopes. Every one carried a different date. She looked at me in disbelief. Did you write all of these for me? I nodded. One letter for every day. You might need me, even if I could no longer stand beside you. A tear slipped down her cheek. Why would you ever leave me alone? I smiled sadly. Life does not ask for permission. It changes everything. Without warning, she reached for the first envelope. I gently stopped her hand. Not today. She looked confused. Why? Because every letter belongs to its own day. If you read tomorrow's letter today, you will lose today's smile. She lowered her hand. Then tell me one thing. Are these letters about another woman? I looked directly into her eyes. Never. My heart has never belonged to anyone except you. She whispered. Then why are you hiding this truth from me? I closed my eyes. Because the truth is not about love. It is about a promise. A promise I made long before I met you. A promise that has been quietly changing both of our lives. She stepped closer. Her voice trembled. What promise? I took a deep breath. Then I whispered. The first letter begins with the answer. And when you finally read it, you may understand why I begged you. The room became silent. Only the sound of our breathing remained. She kept looking at the letters. Then she looked back at me. I never imagined that the man who smiled every day had been carrying so many words alone. I smiled sadly. These letters were never written because I was lonely. They were written because I was afraid. Afraid of leaving behind unanswered questions. Afraid that one day you would remember my silence. Instead of my love, she slowly sat beside me. Then why did you never trust me with the truth? I looked into her eyes. I trusted you more than anyone. That is exactly why I could never tell you some truths. Do not break relationships. They break hearts. She whispered, let my heart break. But never leave me outside your truth. Her words pierced my soul. For a moment, I almost told her everything. But then I looked at the first envelope. My hands stopped shaking because I remembered the promise I had made years ago, long before she entered my life. She noticed the fear in my eyes. Who made you that promise? I remained silent. She gently held my hand. Was it someone in your family? I slowly nodded. Yes. She waited for me to continue, but I could not. The memories were stronger than my voice. I stood up, walked toward the window, closed my eyes, and whispered, there was a night I wish I could erase forever. She stood behind me. Without saying a word, I continued. That night, someone placed their trust in me, and I promised, no matter what happened, I would protect that secret, even if it destroyed me, even if the whole world misunderstood me, even if the woman I loved one day questioned my heart. She slowly wiped away her tears. Then these letters are carrying someone else's secret. I nodded. Yes, but they are also carrying my love for you, because I never wanted you to think that my silence meant I loved you less. I loved you enough to leave behind every answer. In my own handwriting, she walked toward the wooden box. Inside were dozens of envelopes. The first one was marked, "Read this when you stop believing me." The second one said, "Read this when you feel alone." The third one said, "Read this when you cannot forgive me." The fourth one said, "Read this after our biggest argument." The fifth one said, "Read this if the world turns against me." Her tears would not stop. She looked at me. "You prepared for every pain, except your own." I smiled. Love is not preparing someone to stay forever. Love is preparing them to keep feeling your love, even when life changes everything. She held every letter close to her heart. Then she whispered, "I promise, I will read every letter, but I pray I never have to open the first one." I closed my eyes, because deep inside, I already knew. The day she opened that first letter would also be the day everything between us changed forever. That night, neither of us slept. The letters remained on the table, untouched, yet they felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. She sat beside the window, watching the rain fall. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted toward the wooden box, as if the answers inside were calling her name. Finally, she broke the silence. "Can I ask you one last question?" I nodded. "If I read those letters, will I still love you the same way?" My heart stopped for a moment. I wanted to say yes, but I could not lie to her. I looked down. "I do not know." She closed her eyes. "That answer scares me." I whispered, "It scares me too." She slowly stood, walked toward me, and held my face in her hands. "Listen to me. No truth is stronger than the love we built together. Unless you stop believing in us." I wanted to believe her, more than anything, but some promises are made with tears, and they can never be broken, no matter how painful they become. I walked to the bookshelf, reached behind the last row of books, and pulled out a small black diary. She had never seen it before. Its cover was worn. Its pages had turned yellow with time. She looked at it carefully. "What is that?" I answered quietly. "The reason these letters exist." She frowned. "A diary." I nodded. Every letter was written after reading one page from this diary. She stared at me. "Who wrote it?" I closed my eyes. "The only person who ever trusted me with a secret big enough to change my entire life." She reached for the diary, but I gently pulled it back. "Not yet." She looked hurt. "You still cannot trust me." I immediately shook my head. "No, it is not about trust. It is about timing. There are words inside this diary that cannot be unread. Once they enter your heart, they stay there forever." She whispered, "Then why are you carrying them alone?" A tear escaped my eyes. "Because I promised, if someone had to suffer, it would be me, not you." She covered her mouth, trying to stop herself from crying. Then she asked the question I had feared for years. "Does this secret have anything to do with me?" I remained silent. She looked into my eyes. "Please, even if you cannot tell me everything, tell me this one thing. Was our love ever a lie?" Without thinking, I took both of her hands. "Never, not for a single second. Everything I ever felt for you was real. Every smile, every embrace, every promise, every dream, every prayer, every heartbeat belonged only to you." She burst into tears. "Then why do I feel like I am losing you?" I pulled her into my arms, because sometimes love is not separated by distance. It is separated by the weight of a promise. She held me tighter than ever before, as if she was afraid this hug might become a memory. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered into my ear, "No matter what happens, no matter what I discover, no matter how much it hurts, I will keep every promise. And I will never stop reading your letters. I close my eyes because I knew the first letter would be opened much sooner than either of us expected. And the first line written inside it would change her life forever. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For the first time in years, I felt afraid to face the woman I loved, not because she had stopped loving me, but because I knew the day was getting closer when she would finally read the first letter. I quietly walked into the garden. The air was cold. The sky was still dark. I sat alone, holding the black diary in one hand and the first envelope in the other. A few minutes later, she came looking for me. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "You have not slept." I smiled faintly. "Neither have you." She sat beside me, then gently rested her head on my shoulder. For a while, neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence carries more love than words. She suddenly asked, "Can I make one request?" "Of course. Promise me. No more secrets after today." I closed my eyes. I wanted to give her that promise more than anything, but I could not. Instead, I placed the first envelope into her hands. She looked at it. Her fingers trembled. Across the front, only one sentence was written. "Read this only when I can no longer answer your questions." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Why would you write something like this?" I forced a smile. "Because life never tells us when it will steal our chance to speak." She hugged the envelope tightly, as if she was protecting it. Not opening it, she whispered, "I hate these letters. I hate them because every time I look at them, I feel like you are saying goodbye." I gently wiped away her tears. "No, these letters are not my goodbye. They are my way of staying beside you. Even on the days when words fail me." She looked into my eyes. "Then tell me one thing. If you had another chance, would you still choose this silence?" For the first time, I answered without hesitation. "Never. If I could live my life again, I would tell you everything on the very first day, because carrying a promise alone is easier than watching the person you love question your heart." She began to cry. "Then why are we waiting?" I took a deep breath because I made one final promise. The truth does not belong to me alone. It belongs to someone who trusted me with their last wish. Until that wish is fulfilled, these letters must speak in my place." She slowly lowered her head. Then she whispered, "I do not care how long it takes. I will wait, not because I need the answers, but because I choose you every day, even without them." At that moment, a sudden knock echoed through the house. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, not hurried, just enough to change everything. I walked toward the front door. My heart was racing. As I turned the handle, I froze. Standing outside was a man, holding a faded photograph. The moment our eyes met, he quietly said, "I think it's finally time for your wife to read." The very first letter. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The man standing at the door looked exhausted. His hair had turned gray. His eyes carried years of regret. In his trembling hands, he held an old photograph. I looked at the picture. My heart nearly stopped. It was a photograph I had not seen in years. I slowly whispered, "How did you find me?" He smiled sadly. "Some promises take years to reach their destination, but they always find the right door." My wife looked from him to me. She could feel this stranger already knew the truth I had hidden for so long. The man stepped inside without another word. He placed the faded photograph on the table. There were three people standing in the picture. One of them was me, much younger, smiling without fear. The second person was the old man now standing before us. The third face had been carefully torn away. My wife looked confused. Why is this part missing? The old man lowered his head because that face was never supposed to be remembered. The room fell silent. I closed my eyes. The memories returned. Every sound, every promise, every tear, as if that night had happened only yesterday. My wife slowly held my hand. Please, no more silence. I took a deep breath, then looked at the old man. Is it finally time? He nodded. Yes, she deserves the truth. More than anyone. I walked toward the wooden box, picked up the first letter, and placed it beside the photograph. My hands would not stop shaking. My wife whispered, "Should I read it?" I looked into her eyes. For the first time, I did not answer. Instead, I opened the envelope myself. Inside was only one page. The paper had become yellow with age. I began to read aloud. My love, if these words have reached you, then it means the promise I protected for years can finally be spoken. Before you judge my silence, please understand, everything I hid from you was never hidden because I stopped loving you. It was hidden because someone trusted me. With the final moments of their life, I paused. My voice began to break. My wife quietly wiped away her tears. Please continue. I looked back at the letter. Years ago, on a stormy night, a frightened man placed something into my hands. He asked me for only one promise: protect the truth until the day it no longer destroys innocent lives. I promised him without asking a single question. That promise became the heaviest burden of my life. Many times I wanted to tell you everything. Many nights I almost broke my promise just to stop hurting you. But every time I remembered the eyes of the man who trusted me in his final hour, I slowly lowered the letter. The old man standing beside us closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his face. My wife looked at him. Were you there that night? He nodded. I was, she whispered. Then why did you never come before today? His voice trembled. Because I was a coward. I let him carry a burden that belonged to all of us. I stayed silent while he sacrificed his own peace, his own happiness, even his own marriage, to protect a promise. I could no longer let him suffer alone. My wife looked at me. Her eyes were filled with pain. All these years, you thought I would hate you? I slowly nodded. Yes. She stepped closer, placed both hands on my face, and said through her tears, "You fool. I was never waiting for a perfect husband. I was only waiting for an honest heart, and yours never stopped loving me, not even for a single day." I broke down. For years, I had feared this moment, but instead of losing her, I found her all over again. The old man quietly smiled, then reached into his coat. He removed one final envelope. Unlike the others, this one had no writing, no date, no name. He placed it in my wife's hands. This is the last letter. It was never written by him. It was written for him She looked at the envelope. Who wrote it? The old man whispered. The person whose face was torn from that photograph. The room became silent once again. My wife slowly looked at me, then back at the envelope. Without opening it, she already knew. The final letter would change every memory she had ever held close to her heart. No one touched the envelope. It rested quietly in her hands, as if it had been waiting for this moment for years. She looked at me, then at the old man. Her voice trembled. If I open this, will our lives ever be the same again? The old man closed his eyes. No. Some truths never return life to what it was. They only teach us why it had to change. She took a slow breath, then carefully opened the envelope. Inside, there were only 2 pages. The handwriting was different from mine. Older, shakier, as if every word had been written with trembling hands. She looked at the first line, then began reading aloud. To the woman my son loves. If you are reading this, it means he kept his promise. And if he kept his promise, then he also carried my burden for far longer than any man should have. She stopped reading. Her eyes widened. She slowly looked at me. Your father wrote this. I lowered my head. Yes. She continued reading. The man you married will blame himself for things that were never his fault. He will spend years believing that silence is protecting the people he loves. Please do not let him carry that weight forever, because I was the one who asked him to remain silent, not for himself, but for me. Her tears began falling onto the paper. She whispered, Why? Why would a father ask his own son to suffer like this? I quietly answered, Keep reading. She wiped her eyes, then continued, Years ago, I made a mistake that changed several lives. When I finally realized what I had done, it was already too late. I wanted to confess everything myself, but illness stole my strength. Before I could, so I asked my son to protect everyone until the truth could no longer destroy innocent hearts. He wanted to refuse. I saw it in his eyes. But he looked at me and said, Dad, if this is your final wish, I will carry it, even if it costs me my own happiness. My wife could not breathe. She slowly looked at me. You accepted all of that for him? I smiled through my tears. He never asked me for anything. His whole life. That was the first time he ever asked. How could I say no? The old man quietly turned toward the window. He whispered, Your father cried that night. After you left, he kept saying, I have asked my son to carry a burden that belonged to me. May God forgive me. The room fell silent. My wife held the letter against her heart. Then she walked toward me. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she finally stood in front of me, she placed both hands on my face and began crying. Not because you kept a secret, but because you suffered alone while trying to protect everyone else. I closed my eyes. For years, those were the words I had prayed to hear. She hugged me tightly, then whispered, You should have trusted my love. I would have carried this burden with you, even if it broke both of us. I held her closer. I know, and that is the biggest regret I will carry forever. She slowly pulled away, looked at the old man, then looked at the photograph again. There was still one question. Whose face was torn from this picture? The old man walked toward the table. He gently picked up the faded photograph. Then, with trembling fingers, he turned it over On the back, only one sentence was written. The day you learn who stood beside us in this picture, you will finally understand why these letters were written. The room became silent once again, because all three of us knew the final answer was waiting inside one last hidden letter. She folded the last letter, then quietly placed it back inside the envelope. She looked into my eyes. From this day forward, there will be no more secrets between us. I smiled through my tears, then took her hand in mine. For the first time in years, my heart finally felt free. The old man silently walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and said, "The greatest proof of love is not the promises we make. It is the promises we keep." As the door slowly closed, she rested her head on my shoulder, then softly whispered, "I will keep reading your letters than any man should have." She stopped reading. Her eyes widened. She slowly looked at me. "Your father wrote this." I lowered my head. "Yes." She continued reading, "The man you married will blame himself for things that were never his fault. He will spend years believing that silence is protecting the people he loves. Please do not let him carry that weight forever, because I was the one who asked him to remain silent, not for himself, but for me." Her tears began falling onto the paper. She whispered, "Why? Why would a father ask his own son to suffer like this?" I quietly answered, "Keep reading." She wiped her eyes, then continued, "Years ago, I made a mistake that changed several lives. When I finally realized what I had done, it was already